All right, we're under the ramp truck. Got the rear jacked up a little bit. It's not on jack stands, don't worry. It's not gonna kill me if it falls. It's gonna drop an inch from here. So I think I'm okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try and figure out relatively what our gear ratio is without having to take the gears actually out of the differential. This is a 14 bolt GM, pretty standard stuff. There's a lot of gear ratios made for it. I'll show you how we do that. So, first thing we got to do is we need to put a piece of tape on the wheel so that we can keep track of how many rotations. I've just kind of lined it up with the parking brake wire there. And then we also put a mark on the transmission so we know how many times it rotates. And I've just lined it up with the top bolt there on the pinion. So then, this is a little difficult, so I'm going to set the camera down and hopefully get a decent angle so you guys can kind of see. We're going to rotate the tire around and count the drive shaft rotations. Now, this is a non-positive traction rear end, so that means we have to rotate the tire twice to count the drive shaft rotations, and that should give us our gear ratio. So let's start rotating. All right, there's one rotation on the drive shaft. Tire coming back around for its first rotation. There's two rotations on the drive shaft. Come on. Three rotations on the drive shaft. And here comes our mark around for our second tire rotation. And right about there, she's lined up. And if you can see, maybe the camera angle's right, it's almost to 3 3/4 of a turn on the drive shaft. So that tells me that this is probably a 373 rear gear. So that gives me some options, and we'll talk about those here in a little bit. All right, we're under the ramp truck. Seems to be the typical location for me these last couple weeks. As you can see, we're missing a part. Obviously, we've removed the transmission. We've done that for good reason. The transmission that was in this truck was a TH400, also known as a Turbo 400. Very robust, very simple. Problem is, it's a 3-speed, and with the tire profile that I'm running on this truck, it was just screaming at highway speeds. So we've opted to make a change, and it's going to be a bit of a project because obviously we have to bolt a new transmission in. We're having to modify a drive shaft. We're also having to completely change the transmission oil cooler system. So a lot of little things that all add up to one big thing. So let's get started. All right, let's take a look at what we've accumulated here. This is, for all intents and purposes, a rebuilt 4L80E. This is a 4-speed transmission. And let's talk about what we've done to it. So I had it rebuilt. They added in billet converter, and they put a shift kit in it. I went ahead and added brand new speed sensors because the old ones were pretty messed up. So we've got new speed sensors. I've got a brand new transmission mount at the back, and I've added in AN fittings for the cooling lines. Also had to buy a new dipstick, so that's all there too. Other parts that are needed to put this together. We have a modified drive shaft. This has been shortened. I believe 3.5 inches was the final measurement. And I got a brand new slip yoke down there. This was done by L&R Transmissions over in Winston-Salem. They do a lot of drive shaft modifications for some of the guys that are racing. So went with them, even though this isn't a race part, but they did an excellent job. It looks beautiful. Had to order a conversion kit because the 4L80E was never bolted to a column shift truck as far as I know. So this is an adapter to take the column shifter and use it on the 4L80. And also picked up a B&M oil cooler. It's going to mount up in front of the radiator and AC condenser in the truck. And I've got all the fittings and lines for that. I just didn't pull them out for this video. But this is kind of everything that needs to go in. Now it's just a matter of putting all the pieces where they're supposed to go. Well, as you can see, there's no longer a giant hole where the transmission used to be. We now have the 4L80E mostly in the truck. It's not completely bolted down yet. I've got the bolts in the bell housing to the motor done. Dipstick is in. I've got the rear cross member positioned and bolted to the transmission, but I haven't put the bolts in on the frame rails yet. I gotta drill at least 2 other holes from where it needs to be relocated. But right now I'm just trying to finish up some small stuff. I've got to put the 3 bolts for the torque converter to flex plate in. That's kind of my next step. I am really sorry that I didn't film any of this. It was a giant pain to do by myself. So I believe at one point I had 4 jacks under here. I had the transmission jack, 2 regular floor jacks, and a bottle jack to get this positioned in the right way where I could get the dowel pins lined up and slide everything together. And it took about 50 times climbing in and out from under the truck and moving from side to side, and filming that would have just been a giant pain and wasn't going to happen. So I'm almost finished up working under the truck right now. So if I can get done with underneath the truck, filming the stuff from the outside is a lot easier, and you don't have to move the camera around as much, and it's generally not as difficult to do. So I'm going to finish this stuff up under here, maybe shoot a couple of quick shots, and we'll keep working. Alright, so today's project is going to be to fix the cross member where it's supposed to be. We have to move it back a little bit. We're going to be bolting it upside down so that we can use it as a template to re-drill holes farther back. It'll all make sense when it's done. So let's do that. All right. As you can see, we've had to go get some more tools. So I went to go line up the bolt holes to re-drill, move the cross member back, and the holes didn't line up from side to side. I think what happened is, just because of where I had my jack stand sitting, it actually took the frame rails and bent them sort of towards each other on each side of the truck. So that meant that the distance between the bolt holes for the cross member on the frame were too close together, and the bolts wouldn't go in. So I went and I borrowed a friend of mine's Porta Power. Big thanks to Rod Wedby and Hunter Racing Services for having this thing. I've used it a couple of times on several different projects, and these things come in super handy. So what we've done is we've just put it in there and used it to spread the frame rails apart just a little bit. It's only about 1/2 inch, but that's enough to make the bolt not go in. And it's really amazing how easily these frame rails move back apart with this thing. I didn't have to put much pressure on it at all. So the cross member definitely adds quite a bit of strength between the two frame rails, and it actually kind of makes me want to go back farther back down the drivetrain of the truck and maybe put another one in at some point, just to tie the frame rails together to keep them from flexing around. But anyway, we are there now. The frame rails are back pressed apart, and we're going to drill some holes. All right, just tightening up the last of the cross member bolts here. I got them all in. I went ahead and bought new hardware. Whenever I get a chance to buy new hardware, especially for stuff that's rusty, I like to do that. Alright, the last thing to do is just tighten down the bolt that holds the cross member to the transmission mount. And then we can get this porta power out of here and move on to something else. And hopefully that something else doesn't require so much laying under the truck. I'm getting kind of tired of that. Alright, transmission is officially bolted in. Now I just got to attach all the stuff that goes to it. Just keep going. Alright, next order of business is getting the drive shaft back connected. And I'm not really sure how this is going to go. So let's see. This could be very interesting. Take that one down here. She's in. Whee.